What's up, everybody? Welcome to BzG's official review for Star Trek Beyond. My name is Barrett Courtney. I am your reviewer today, one of your reviewers, and here, joined with me, is a special guest reviewer, Alyssa Shimoda. What's up, Alyssa? How you doing today?
Hi.
Hi. We just saw Star Trek Beyond. Beyond, for Beyond listeners out there. So, before we get into sort of this review, discussion, reacts of the new Star Trek movie, I just want to talk about for maybe a minute of like what our sort of relationship is with Star Trek, just to give some context for people who might just sort of be random watchers out there who don't know us here at BzG. So, what is your relationship with Star Trek?
So I am a very casual watcher of Star Trek.
Yes.
I did not watch the TV shows, not because I wasn't interested, just circumstances. It was not available to me. And now, as a first year teacher, there's not a lot of time for things like that. But I did enjoy the movies when they were brought back in this new.
So you saw the
I saw the first one in
and
theaters and the second one in theaters, and I enjoyed them. And as a serious in high school, I took literature and studying literature and analyzing and all that seriously. So just as a person who loves literature and stories and good characters and all of that, I appreciate.
and it's appealing to you at least.
Yeah, because I enjoy adventures and that whole genre and.
See, Star Trek was brought to me at a very young age. Sort of same with Doctor Who, because of one person, my grandfather, Donald Zabriskie. Huge.
Not Spock.
Yeah, in fact, not Spock. It's a little inside joke thing where he wrote a letter to my sister,
No, it's
clarifying. Well, now they're inside on the joke, right?
Okay.
Clarifying
Okay.
that he was
Good
not,
point.
in fact, Spock. So he's a huge Star Trek fan. I remember watching The Next Generation a lot when I was a kid, and that specific series, The Next Generation, was sort of my thing, right? Never really watched like the original series, but my grandfather, huge on all the series. He loves the first one, the original one. He loves Next Generation. He likes Voyager. He has action figures of all of those different generations and whatnot. So that was sort of my thing of watching The Next Generation from time to time. And then I've been recently watching Next Generation on Netflix. And I also went to go see the movies in theaters. The first one I went to go see with my mom, which was a big deal because my mom doesn't really go see movies, right? But we both went to go see Star Trek because, she was also raised by my grandfather. So she is also, at a very young age, brought into sort of nerdy Star Trek shit. So we went to go see that together. Very nice bonding moment right there, especially because we're both really into Beastie Boys, and in the first Star Trek movie where Kirk is a young kid and he steals his stepdad's car and he blasts Sabotage by the Beastie Boys. Like, my mom and I looked at each other, we're like, holy shit, this movie is awesome. So now that you have a little more context of how we feel about Star Trek and our relationship with Star Trek, let's talk for a couple minutes our general non-spoilery thoughts about this movie. So, I was saying this to you when we were walking around. We were getting dinner right after the movie. And I said, this movie is very different. And obviously, there's a new director, Justin Lin, who directed a lot of the Fast and Furious movies. J.J. Abrams obviously was not available because, he was doing Star Wars. Sorry. And so there's definitely a different vibe. And I think for the worst and for the better in different aspects. For the worst, I would say I don't feel like and this obviously this doesn't deal with the directors, but I think there is definitely there is a writing change. I think there were two writers originally for the first two movies, and I think they left. I think it's Roberto Orci or Robert Orci and Simon something, and they went on to write other movies, I believe, and they did not return for this one. And so for this one, it's Simon Pegg and someone else who wrote the script for Beyond. And I would say the writing this time around feels a little more classic Star Trek, and the setup of sort of scenes and the different pacing of different scenes and whatnot. You know, the first two Star Trek movies are very like fast paced all the time, crazy, moving beats fast, very much like Star Wars, which is, you know, definitely Abrams doing, because when he directed Star Trek, he was definitely in the mindset of, man, I'd really rather be directing a Star Wars movie. And then he finally got to do one. And this one is definitely more akin to like original Star Trek shows. I was telling you this. The pacing is more of like an episode of Star Trek. But I would say, and that's sort of more of its stronger suit. It separates itself from the first two movies, and it stands out a little more because of that. But it also falters a little bit because of the new writing team. The dialogue itself felt really bland at times. And there wasn't like, you lose that sort of fast-pacedness, which I think fits better in a movie rather than, you know, the TV shows, right? Because you have sort of the more slower-paced dialogue in Star Trek TV shows, and I love it. Watching The Next Generation right now, it definitely has that, and I fucking love it. I love it for what it is because it fits well. But in the movie aspect, I would say it's a little awkward at times. But I would say there are still like really funny moments, and you were saying that you thought this movie was even funnier than you remember of the first two.
Yeah, I just remember more characters being quippy, and it happening a little more often. Like, I don't know if it's just because I haven't seen 1 and 2 in a while. But I feel like those moments were not necessarily rare, but they were a little more few and far between. They were definitely gems that's like were sprinkled throughout the first and second movie, whereas like this was like, you know, Spock and McCoy were having exchanges, and it wasn't just like one-liners, it was like an actual back and forth banter. Yeah. I guess that's the difference. Instead of being like one-liners that are thrown in there, it's like it's a banter. It takes a little more, the moment lasts longer, so it's therefore stands out and is a little bit more enjoyable, I guess. Yeah. Or then it can kind of breach from being like, there's funny moments to like, this is a funny scene or a funny scene.
Yes. I understand you a little more, because I went back and watched the first two first couple of days, and I didn't understand you at first. I was like, no, those movies definitely have like a lot of funny moments, but I understand you now. Like, you're definitely like, you hit
it's like a zing and then it's over.
Yeah, in the first two, that's definitely what it is. And this one, it's definitely more of back and forth, drawn out. And that's something I definitely appreciate.
Yeah.
The villain, I would say it's sort of the same problem. You helped me review Captain America: Civil War, and my problem with the villain in Civil War was like, at the very end, we finally got sort of like the payout of like what that villain was doing, and it's very much the same in this one, where a lot of the entirety of the film, it's like, what is this guy's motivation? And then you don't really know until like the last 10 minutes of the movie, and you're like, okay, now I get it. But when you're like experiencing the movie for the first time, when you're watching it, when you don't know what his motivation is, the suspense is sort of lost, of like, oh wow, this is really suspenseful, but I'm losing it a little bit because it feels like he's being bad just to be bad. But then, you know, they pull you into a different direction. You're like, no, hey, this is the reason. And then it's finally like this sort of payoff, but I feel like they just do it a little late. It was sort of a weird reveal for me, I would say. So that's just sort of my take on it.
And we talked about, this is very Gryffindor of me, where I don't have that complaint.
Oh my god, I'm such a Gryffindor.
No. You have to do that?
But yeah, you were saying like how you're very like, you don't give a shit like what the villain wants.
I don't have that complaint. I don't need to know why the villain is bad. The villain is bad, and we need to take him down. He needs to just be taken care of. And that's all I care about. He needs to be taken care of.
And me being a theatrical piece of shit, where I'm all about character development, no matter who the character is, I wanted more of like drawn out sort of villain character depth, and that's just sort of my personal preference. It wasn't like a huge, it didn't put like an entire damper on the film. I would say overall, I really, really liked it.
Yeah.
I thought each character sort of had their moments. Characters who didn't really have a lot of moments in the first two, like we got to see a lot of Chekhov more, and we got to see a lot more of Scotty, and sort of characters that are
people who are usually on the ship, and they're involved because you're talking to them and they're doing things for you on the ship, but they're not in the action necessarily because they're making things happen in the background. This time they were involved in the action. They were taken out of the ship.
Yeah, everybody.
They were taken out of the ship as part of the story, but that allowed for these characters to be a little more active.
Yes, it's more
instead
of like
of pulling the strings.
Yeah, instead of like sitting and being like, I'm doing something and sitting down.
And we know what they're doing. We know they're important because it's being narrated to us. But
I was about to spoil something because in case people are going in blind, right? I was about to say something which is sort of smart of how they got them out of their chairs, right?
Right.
But yeah, this was definitely more like getting people actually like physically involved and whatnot. So I thought that was really
great
cool
because you want to see those characters. We're at the point where we like them a lot.
Yeah.
And so now instead of them just being, they're not necessarily sidelined on purpose. That's just their role in the crew.
Yeah.
But they've been removed from the ship, so now they get to have a more active role, and it's great to see them in on the physical actual action.
Yeah.
Now.
I would say this is definitely like the great summer blockbuster we've been waiting for this entire summer. I felt like sort of it was Civil War, and that was like too early in the summer, and these last couple months, like yeah, you're fucking crazy, like bullshit.
This is the only movie of the summer that I bothered to go out of my way to go see.
Yeah, this is definitely like a blockbuster popcorn summer film with actual substance, right? This isn't the only popcorn blockbuster film this summer, but this is, I feel like, the first one that actually has substance and is of quality, at least. Because, you have your fucking Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles too, and it's like, oh, look, Megan Fox in a schoolgirl outfit, and you're like, oh, cool. Whatever. So I really enjoyed the film. I would highly recommend to go see it. It's definitely my personal preference and sort of how they lead because they've already announced that they're working on a fourth one. It'll have like the same like crew and whatnot. I would have rather this have ended with as like a sort of trilogy and then move on to a new trilogy of the next generation. I thought that would have been fucking dope. But they're doing what they want to do, and I respect that. Respect them for that. So, Alyssa, how did you feel in general about the movie?
As a casual Star Trek movie fan, it was awesome. I'm just gonna keep it simple. It was awesome. Yeah. I enjoyed it.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was our spoiler-free thoughts. So, if you haven't seen the movie yet, get the fuck out of here. Go see the movie. It's really fun. It's definitely, if you're looking for something to watch this weekend, go see it. It's the thing to see right now. So, go see it and then come back and then have the rest of this discussion available for you and get in on that discussion. It's your final warning. Get the fuck out. All right, Alyssa, let's get into the spoilery thoughts here. Now, I've had some critiques from fellow friends out there of our past reviews, because I really don't know how the fuck to do video reviews. I do my written reviews, and then video reviews are sort of new to me. So the main complaint with Civil War was I was going beat by beat of like, this happened, then this happened, then this happened, and not really explaining why we liked those moments. So I guess the first thing I'll ask you is like, what was your favorite moment in the movie? I think that's a good starting point. I'll start. The really cool thing about this movie, it was like, and the weird thing, it was like there was cool character depth and a lot of like callbacks, but then not at the same time. Like, I felt like Spock had like a really important sort of development with his character, but I felt like he was hardly in it enough to like have that resonate, because at the beginning, right, it's like you find out that Ambassador Spock died, the original Spock, and that was really fucking upsetting. When like I knew like when the other Vulcans approached him and he's like standing by himself, I whispered to you, I was like, original Spock died, and then they pulled it up and it shows the star date of like when he was born and then when he died, and that was just so fucking upsetting, just because the original fuck, I'm blanking on his name right now. Why can't I think of his name?
Leonard Nimoy.
Leonard Nimoy, thank you.
You're welcome.
whenever, I'm doing video shit and I have to remember someone's name, I always fucking forget it because I never do research before the video. Leonard Nimoy obviously passed away, and that was like a really just fucking like a really upsetting just like realization of like fuck he is gone in real life and in the movies, and that was really upsetting. But like you had that development of like realizing that, sort of coming to terms, and that's sort of a theme that's rolled out with Spock in every movie, I feel like, so far. Like the first one, it was very much of like watching his planet die and watching his mother die and all this stuff, and then the second one, like the beginning of the movie when they're like saving the people from the volcano and he's like preparing himself to die and whatnot, and then his best friend dies, Kirk, and then they bring Kirk back so they don't really have to really deal with that. But in that moment where he dies and then he yells Khan, and then this one where he's brought to the realization of his own death and stuff, and realizing, this different version of him has passed on, and I think that's interesting that every single movie
he does deal with death.
Yeah, like
I hadn't noticed that.
It's sort of weird, and I feel like it's sort of old at this. Like it's cool in a way, but I feel like the way that they're doing it is just not like. I feel like it doesn't serve any purpose anymore. It's sort of like hitting on the same beat over and over and over again without having any purpose to do it. But so that was in like the beginning of the movie, and then I feel like because everybody else had like their own moments and had like developing scenes and whatnot, we couldn't spend as much time with Spock, because the first two movies it was very much like a buddy movie where you had everybody else, but it was mainly like Spock and Kirk figuring shit out, and that wasn't really this movie anymore. So I felt a little weird about that. I would say that's something I didn't like about the movie. We didn't get that more of that developing friendship anymore. But then at the end of the movie, going through Ambassador Spock's old things and seeing the picture of the original cast.
Yeah.
On like the Enterprise was really, really cool, and I teared up a little bit, just because of just sort of looking back at the lineage, especially because this is the 50-year anniversary of Star Trek this year. Yeah, cool. 50 I believe. Yes. So I thought that was like a really cool sort of look back, and this film did a lot of that, right? Like the
That's why these kinds of movies are fun.
Yeah, like there are a lot of callbacks, and they did it in taste, right? Like a callback, I guess, was Sulu is gay in this universe, and even though Takei has voiced that like he rather Sulu not be gay, and kept to the original interpretation, even though I feel like Sulu's sexuality has never really been talked about before. Maybe not. I again didn't really watch the original Star Trek series. So I thought that was a cool like homage to Kay and sort of his leadership basically in LGBT community and gay rights and whatnot. And then the callback to the first Star Trek movie, like the reboot, right, where they're sending the signals to like jam all like the bees and whatnot, and you were saying, like, you sort of figured it out ahead of time. It's like, oh, they're going to play the song, and you thought they were going to play Fight the Power again.
Yeah.
But in my mind, I knew, because at this point in the movie, so far, the entire time, I was like, why haven't we heard a Beastie Boys song yet? Why haven't we heard a Beastie Boys song yet? Because in the first Star Trek and in Star Trek Into Darkness, Beastie Boys has played a part in it. And then when they blast Sabotage, which was so perfect, because like I was thinking of just do another Beastie Boys song, just a different one like they did in Into Darkness, but they brought it back to the first movie where Kirk is a young kid and he's playing Sabotage in his stepdad's car, and they brought that same song back, and then Kirk is like, good song choice. Like that was just so fucking cool. So now that you've had time to think, what would be your favorite?
I'm gonna bypass this question because
okay.
I'm not good at picking favorite things.
Okay, just
I'm gonna just go.
What did you like about it?
I was really appreciative of like this struggle that they start off.
And sort of the repetition
dealing with for Captain Kirk, where he definitely has hit like a low point of being captain, and we eventually find out like he's applied to get out and do
Be-
something else and be a
he's
vice admiral
Yeah,
on a
like
base instead of being a captain of a ship.
Yeah.
Because and he taught like he's hit a lull and it's not what it used to be for him.
Yeah.
And it's revealed to us by the lady who would be hiring him for this job.
Yep.
And she tells him almost basically like there's no shame in the fact that you don't want to be a captain anymore because it is easy to lose yourself when you're facing the unknown, right? Because his job is to explore that which has not been explored before.
Yes.
So and he's definitely like beginning to feel the strain of that and the stress of that. And when I first saw or heard that, it seemed like a really great parallel because this is the stage of my life that I'm in where like I am now an adult and I am facing not space but my unknown of being an adult, and like if you don't know yourself it's easy to lose sight of what to do.
It was a good theme.
It was a great theme
that could hit everybody in a way.
Yeah. Everyone faces their own unknown and everyone faces the challenge of like, what do I do when I don't know? How do I deal with this? How do I get out of this?
And it wasn't overdone.
It was very quick, and then they were faced with another adventure, and of course, Captain Kirk just is like, yeah, let's do it. Let's go for it, you know? But then they bring it back around when we find out the villain, I'm going to just go for this. When we...
Crawl?
We find out Crawl is actually an old... The original, like OG,
the first
Federation
captain.
Where
like his ship.
He's the first ship to be sent
to explore
yeah. And do exactly what Kirk is doing. And as soon as that was revealed, I was like, this is it. This is bringing it full circle to the dilemma that Kirk is facing, where he's faced with the unknown and he doesn't know what to do and he's losing himself. And this is a man who's in his shoes exactly and did in fact lose himself in the unknown.
See, I like that about the villain, right? Is like
right.
I did like that parallel, but again, like when I was saying the spoiler-free discussion is sort of like they almost revealed it too late because I feel like it would have been cooler to maybe reveal that maybe in the middle of the movie, sort of like how they reveal that it's Khan in the middle of the movie. Like you got to spend about 45 minutes with Khan, like not knowing him as John Harrison or whatever. It was like, I am Khan was sort of like almost, from what I remember, maybe not exactly in the middle of the movie, but maybe like a little bit afterwards, but you get to spend
and you even made the comment with this villain, like, why are they not even, once we reveal this about him, they're like, you were like, why aren't they even showing his face? You know, like they just waited a really long time to reveal things about this character.
It was sort of a weird pacing for his development. It was like, let's hold off until literally, it was legit like the last 15 minutes of the movie where we reveal
many of the major battle scenes, I shouldn't say fight, but battle scenes were already over.
Yeah,
and it was time we got to
and
this.
They would have been more, and again, this is me just being a theater fucking snob, they would have been to me a little more suspenseful and a little more emotionally resonant if we got that early and we got those like it's almost hitting home scenes of like, because there was no moment where Kirk like takes a moment and realizes he lost himself, sort of like how I'm scared of losing myself. And there was no moment for that character to realize the foil. Like, we got it, but there was no like cool moment where, you know, the good guy and the bad guy take a moment and look at each other and realize how close they are to being one and the same. Mm-hmm. There was no moment like that. So that was the part where I was like, you were so close. But I still, you know, he's an enjoyable villain for the most part. Like, again, it's just like a lot of build up and it doesn't pay off until like the last 5% of the movie. And I don't enjoy when any sort of media does that, whether it's TV shows or fucking theater or movies, because what it says to me is like, okay, we wrote this, and this without really thinking about what we're doing with them. Oh shit, we only have 10 pages left to write. Let's do this, right? It just feels, it's just a weird pace. And I would say it's that, and the fact that it's like the weird sort of like there was banter in this movie, but I didn't feel like it was quite as fast, and it was also like sort of weirdly worded, and it wasn't well worded like the first two movies. There are just like a lot of lines where I was like, why are people talking like this right now? So I don't know. I would say those are my only two like real criticisms of the movie. Like it's well acted again, except this. Okay, this is my third sort of criticism. Idris Elba, I say, is sort of weak. Maybe due to just sort of like how the character was written, but also like he's talking really weird throughout the entirety of it, and it's like takes me out of it a little bit. Like I want to be terrified of him, and I feel like this is probably what most people felt like when they watched Dark Knight Rises and they saw Bane. It's like, wow, I really want to be terrified by you, but I can't understand you, and it's like. So I got that a little bit from this. It's like, oh, you could be so much scarier if you weren't constantly like talking like this and fucking like looking up like this and shit. So it's like and it's not like Elba's a bad actor. I feel like he was just poorly. Justin Lin just didn't know how to direct
an
him.
alien.
Not an.
He's an alien. He was an alien.
Okay. But he wasn't though. That was the whole point.
Right. Well, he kind of
was. Did you have any criticisms of the movie though? No. 10 out of 10, Alyssa Shimoda. A+ movie.
Peace out. No.
No? Okay.
I think I have summer brain. I can't be too critical, but I was definitely thinking about, themes and things that I appreciated about it. So there's that.
Oh, but yeah, so
looking for a good time.
Yeah, I would say like it closed out nicely with the whole like again the whole full circle and sort of Kirk realizing like this is actually what I want to do, right?
Yeah,
and
there's this great moment of both him and Spock actually are going through this idea that they should not be anymore, and without telling each other, and they're really torn up about like admitting it to each other, and then at the end, still without saying it, they both confirm like, no, this is where we belong.
Yeah, and that was again,
I thought that was sweet.
That was like sort of a sweet part, but like also it could have been done a little better if they were on screen with each other a little more, because I felt like they hardly had any screen time with each other.
Yeah.
In this movie, but I think it did like wrap up nicely, and another sort of question I had is like, where's Lieutenant Marcus, the daughter of the villain in the last movie, where she is on the Enterprise with them when they leave for their 5-year mission, and she's just sort of not here this time. I know it's probably like fucking she didn't want to come
I didn't
back.
notice, so people like me are just gonna dive right into this new adventure and not care about that.
I literally watched Into Darkness yesterday, so I was like, what, or 2 days ago, so I was like, where the fuck is she?
I did really appreciate the continuing theme without having to say the same line over and over again of like strength in numbers and strength in unity, and Uhura says it and names it, but then
it's only like really said twice.
That specific, but the idea is repeated, and Krall talks about how like that's not important, that the and then it comes back around with this story, and I thought about it because I really liked the character of Jayla, but
yeah, she was cool, she was funny, and she and that was definitely like, you could tell those scenes were specifically written by Simon Pegg, of just sort of like the back and forth banter and whatnot. Like that was definitely like Simon Pegg humor, but not like too much where it like takes you out and you don't feel like it's a Star Trek movie anymore. It's like his humor morphed fit into a Star Trek movie,
which I thought was smart. She was so smart. She did so many smart things. She had rigged this ship up, all of these traps. She was on it, and she was a fierce fighter.
The one thing I thought was weird was like, they figured out like they had to go save their friends from the bad guy Krall or whatever, and then she was like, "No, I won't do it."
See, this is what I was trying to get to, right?
They convinced her in like 30 seconds to do it. She's like, "Oh, okay, I'll do it."
Well, I think because it's one of those things where she lost her family, she lost her father, she lost everyone to this person. I get where she's coming from, and then, but I think the key part is that she's like missing that sense of belonging and missing that sense of safety in unity, in family, in crew. And Scotty brings it up right away. And it's right after we've heard Uhura say there's strength in unity and strength in numbers. And he doesn't name it the same way, but he says, if you're part of a crew, that's what that sense of belonging is. You're not going to get left behind this time. And I think that it stems from being alone for so long, and it stems from literally losing her father to this villain. And then he takes away her ability to belong. She doesn't have a family. She doesn't have a crew. She's on her own for years, assuming, right?
It's not like I didn't understand it. I know what they were going for. It just felt too easy, right? It was like they convinced her within 30 seconds to do it. And I
liked it because of the connection that it immediately made, the theme that it made.
There's the subtle theme that they were bringing throughout, and it was done really well. But
I just really wanted her to keep being part. Like, I didn't want her to just back out now.
Yeah.
She's fucking badass. I needed to see her fights more.
But I would have liked it if she had more of that internal struggle a little longer. Again, it felt like this sort of like, no, I won't do it. Okay, yes, never mind. Just kidding. So that just sort of development felt a little too fast and a little too easy for me, I would say.
No, it felt really... No, I felt more sad by her story to finally hear it. And also because Captain Kirk is in the background, listening to how her father sacrificed himself so that she could go on. And Kirk is standing in the background after already grappling with the fact that his father is an incredible man who gave up his life for his entire crew and him, and he feels like he's not living up to that greatness. And here's a girl who went through the exact same experience of her father giving up his life for his child. And Captain Kirk is in the background listening to her struggle with, like, I can't go back there because I watched my father die there and I lost everything. And I was just like, oh, there it is. And then she turns and asks him, and she just asks him, like, what do you think? Right? And it's important that she asks him because he shares that experience with her. They have that connection. I don't know that they know it necessarily, but I did. And it was powerful.
Well, he definitely does.
Well, yeah, he knew it. She didn't. But for me, it was powerful that she turned to him. Right? And all he says is, all I know is we can't do it without you. Which sounds like a cop-out answer, but then you think about it and you can't do it without you. They can't do it without her because there's strength in unity. And
Alyssa, in general, your general thoughts, how, again, in a spoiler-filled context, how did you like the film?
I will still keep it simple. It was awesome. I liked it a lot. It was definitely like a really enjoyable way to spend my time when I'm just...
Would you suggest people go see it this weekend?
Yes.
Yeah. Again, like I said in sort of the spoiler-free portion, definitely a fun summer movie. It's action-packed. Like the one thing is like sort of the weird cinematography choices. I would say another criticism I have of like some of the action sequences. They remind me of Hunger Games, the first one, where it's like shaky cam, a lot of shaky cam. I was getting a little nauseous.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of like cool like stunts and stuff that you see, and like it was definitely a suspenseful movie, and it hit it really well, which I wouldn't expect anything less from Justin Lin, who I've heard does suspense really well in the Fast and Furious movies. So I thought it was really fun, weirdly like deep in ways that I did not expect, but then also a little lacking with some characters that I wanted to see a little more. But yeah, if I had to give this movie a score, I'd probably give it like an 8.5 out of 10. And that's probably what I would give the other two movies. Like, I don't think like this movie does things better than the first two did, but also does some things a little worse than the other two did. Mm-hmm. But it like balances out. Like it like overall general quality, I think like they're all just sort of solid movies. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. What did you think of the movie? You can leave your thoughts in the comments below, or tweet them at Bayazona Gamers or at Banana Chung, not at Alyssa's Twitter because that shit's private. But you can, send your thoughts that way so we can have an open discussion about our thoughts about the movie. Because, that's why I love doing this, having a discussion with you guys about the fucking nerdy shit that we love. Anyway, thank you guys so much for joining us for our official review for Star Trek Beyond. And until next time, stay nerdy.